Kripa Kevalam. Namaste everyone. Very warm welcome to Satsang today. Sadguru Sri Muji Baba ki Jai. Just before I came into the Satsang hall, I got a question which was, if the mind doesn't exist, then why do we speak of it so much? If the mind doesn't exist, then basically what is all this fuss about? So maybe we look at it really slowly. Look at it really slowly so that it can become a bit clearer, and if it's not, we can look again slowly. So let's look at what we mean by mind firstly, because the mind is not something, the word mind is not something special which inherently means something. We have defined it to mean something in particular, and in this itself there is some confusion, because how the sages have also used mind traditionally, there is possibility of confusion in that. So like in India, we have the concept of the big mind and the small mind. So let's slowly look at what we mean. So in the deep sleep state or dreamless sleep, there is no phenomenal experience whatsoever, isn't it? So that is clear for everyone, that there is no phenomena that we are experiencing when there is sleep. Then waking state comes. Then this waking state comes, what happens? What do we mean waking state comes? Firstly, what wakes up? I wake up. Is it? So this I that wakes up is which one? The I that wakes up is which one?
Awareness.
Awareness, he says, consciousness, you say. Is it? We'll come to that particular question of whether it is awareness. For now, let's call it consciousness. Okay? So, this consciousness, I am, sense wakes up. Okay? Then, what else wakes up?
The whole world wakes up.
The whole world wakes up. Whole world means perception. Is it? And what are the different types of perception? It can seem like visual perception, audio perception, smell, taste, touch, all this perception. And also that which we call inner perception, but that inner thing will go later. Inner perception means what? Imagination, memory, thoughts, feelings, emotions. It is all a bit too much because there's so much. So, in our mental attempt to make sense of it, we use certain definitions. These body sensations also wake up as the waking state comes. This body perception is there. So we use some definitions to try and make sense of what is what. See, otherwise, it can seem like there's too much chaos to deal with. There's too many stimulus, too much sensation, too much. So to try and fathom all of this, so all of this is there, dancing around. For the mind or for our mental faculty in some way to make sense of this, we need to have some definitions, so that it can seem like we have understood what is going on. So first we will say, this set of sensations which seem so intimate in this way, body sensations and the visual perception at the center of which I seem to be. Let's use a term for that. We'll call it body. Nothing inherently in the body was saying, this is the body, I am the body. This is a label that we use. And it is different in all languages. Then, all this, so if we presume that this is the body and this is where I am contained, then everything outside of this is what we call the world. Nothing inherently there was also saying, I am the world, I am the universe, I am this realm. These are all terms that we use, isn't it? Now, there's a particular set of sensations which are these thoughts, memories, imagination. Is it? So either we can just leave it at that thoughts, memories, imagination, and deal with that just like this, or we can make another label, which is mind. So this is the mind. The thing is that if we include imagination in that, you see, then at some level, all of this is the imagination. Imagination. We create this imagery. You see? So consciousness is projecting all of this. So if we include imagination in the definition of the mind, then we come to the sage's definition of big mind. You see? Because all of this is the imagination of consciousness, just like a dream. You see? So, but if you use another definition, it is this small mind, you see, which is this seeming inner perception of thoughts, memories, and imagination. You see? Now, it is a very fleeting, if you take this definition, the Bhagwan definition, that is, the mind is a bundle of thoughts, you see, then it is a very fleeting quality, isn't it? I was saying the other day, instead of trying to get rid of the mind, you try to hold on to it and tell me if you succeeded. You see? The thought comes and it goes. So when the thought is there, then we call that mind. When the thought is not there, we call that no mind. You see? It's a very fleeting quality. So when it is there, we say there's mind. It's not there, there is no mind. So in fact, I rarely ever say that the mind does not exist. And even if I do say it, I mean that the one that it is seeming to represent, you see, that one does not exist. You see? Because mind, no mind. Mind, no mind. You see? So who is this voice representing? You see? The the seeming person. You see? Let's not even say the term ego, because the term ego also has many different meanings. Like if you speak to people on the streets and if you say, you seem to have an ego, and you'll be like, no, I'm very nice and very humble. You see? So this can seem like, no, I'm not egoistic. But if you say, but you're a person, no? Of course I'm a person. You see? So the way we use the term ego in satsang is that this idea, this sense of belief in a separate entity called a person. You see? Now, you notice that as these thoughts come, they're presenting this limited persona. They're claiming the existence of this limited persona, which when we investigate for ourselves, like if the mind says, or if this thought says, there is Santa Claus sitting at the end of this room. There is Santa Claus sitting at the end of this room. We cannot just believe it because it is saying it. It says all kinds of things. So what is worthy is to look, is there really Santa Claus sitting at the end of this room? And you look and you find that it is not there. So you can say, okay, no children in satsang. So Santa Claus did not exist, at least in this room. So in the same way, when we're looking at what the mind is saying about me, and we look for this me, we find that this me does not exist. The one that is limited does not exist. You see? So when we are saying the non-existence of this ego, we are talking about that which the mind is claiming to represent, that who the mind is claiming to represent, that one does not exist. So, so it is mostly like that. Now, if you use a higher definition of what exists and what does not exist, you see, then if we go with Vedanta and the sages, you see, only the real exists. You see, only the real exists. Fine, okay, only the real exists. So how to find the real? That which does not come and go is real. You see? So if they have said that which does not come and go is real. So if you apply that parameter, then what exists? You see? So then by that definition, no phenomena ultimately exists. What can we say about that witness? You see? That which witnesses the coming and going of phenomena. You see? That is what we usually call awareness. So even the coming and going of the sense of existence, my being, Atma, you see, is witnessed by that which is the absolute, or you would call it Brahman, or the self. You see? So, so this is how terminology can get confusing sometimes. You see? And we use language to be able to point to certain elements of our experience, but that doesn't mean that inherently it exists in that way. So, so the mind, it appears as a energetic construct which we call thoughts and similar energies like imagination, memory. In that way, it seems to appear and disappear just like all other appearances do. So I hope that clarifies a little bit. Now, why do we always pick on the mind? This is the next question, isn't it? That why is it that all these appearances come, but we always saying, "Oh, that is mine, that is mine. Leave it alone. Don't believe what it is saying." Is it? Because there is nothing else in this world of appearance, even in the waking state, which is conveying a limitation. There is nothing else inherently which is pointing to a limited me. Everything else is completely operating in oneness, fullness. Even these are terms, but you know what I mean. You see? So, but there is one voice which is convincing you that you are this limited entity. Just like that there is this Santa Claus in the room. Have you seen this Santa Claus? You see? And it is not just that it is convincing you that there is Santa Claus in the room. That like it's a harmless myth. You see? With this limitation also comes suffering. You see? Because then if I am limited, then I can have a grievance against you. You see? Then I can have a desire for something. Then I can have this doership that I have to do or not do. You see? So, what is suffering? But all of these things grievances, pride, arrogance, guilt, all of these terms. That's another bigger term we make is to define the whole box of them, which is called suffering. So it is not like a harmless belief that, oh, there might be something up there in the sky above. It's okay. Sometimes these kind of beliefs can be there, but they don't really seem to harm us so much. But it is this belief in this individual existence which has become the premise for most of humanity. And that's why it can seem like, even when the Buddha said the world is suffering, it can seem like the world is suffering. So, this is why we look at the mind and we say, is there another device? Is there another device which is convincing you that you are limited? Yesterday we looked at this in great detail where he said, but the appearance of the body or the sensations of the body itself convinces me that I am a separate entity. But we looked at that and we looked at the sensations of the body, the visual perceptions of the body, and we checked where are they being perceived. And we saw that all of this is in the one space of my existence. You see? There is no separation there. It's just like this space, where is this space perceived? Even this space is perceived. You see? That this space which contains all of these objects, even this space is perceived. So what is that space which perceives this space? Or where is this space in which this space is perceived? Now you cannot solve this, and even if you have the answer, you cannot rely on it. You cannot compute your way to this answer. You can just have an intuitive insight about this. You can look within and see intuitively that all of this is here within the space of my existence. Then it will become clear what Bhagavan meant that All of this appears in the light of your consciousness, on the screen of your consciousness. There is nothing apart from you. So let all of these terms just not be like very fanciful concepts that we picked up from the sages. Let these become a true insight. Now, as we are coming to this insight, this voice will come and it will say, but who's going to pay your bills? You see? But what will you get as a result of this? But what about this? What about your emails? What about something? You see? So this voice will come and say, again, proposing to you that you are a limited entity, that you were born and you will die. So proposing all of these limited notions about yourself to you, this voice will come. That's why it is said in Satsang that look beyond the mind. Look for yourself for what is true. Because this voice is designed to be this false narrative. The narrator which is conveying to you that you are a character in this movie. Not the screen, not the projector, not the witness, but a character in the movie. But there is no actual real evidence of this. That's why we seem to always be picking on the mind. So like yesterday also I was saying that sometimes I used to get this complaint that the mind is also consciousness. You see? So why are you always after the mind? Everything is consciousness, including the mind. You see? And but in the play of consciousness, all opposites are present. So there's your intuition which is pointing you to your truth. But there is the opposite pointer also, which is called the mind. But as more and more we come to our notionless existence, we find that we don't need to make any distinction, even between awareness and consciousness, even between phenomenal and non phenomenal, between any quality. Nothing causes a real separation. So, and Papaji said nothing has ever happened, that no real distinction has ever come into play. You are the same one who was fully present in your deep sleep. You are the same one who was fully present in your deep sleep. The appearance of your manifest aspect has not added to you. It is just a play of yourself, tasting yourself in a manifest way. So, what can happen here in this play, in this phenomenal appearance? It can hurt you in reality. Unless you consider yourself to be something first. And you cannot do that without, again, the mind, without a notional boundary which divides, which makes a distinction. I am here, you are there. You see, but this is just a soup of sensations. And this entire soup of sensations, entire play of phenomena is where okay, the mind it's in space, there is the space which comes, and in that space all this comes. Where is that space? In which space is this space born? This is a non-spatial space. You have to still say space because it has a space for something to be born. And yet, it is not that type of space which can be measured. Like the space of this room, I can say height, length, breadth. But this space of my being, who can measure that? That is why the sages have said Maya. Another definition of Maya is that which can be measured. But you are beyond Maya, the immeasurable one.
Is there like a point or a kind of, you used to say like if you put a piece of ice into a glass of water,
Yeah.
right at the edge of the ice cube, there's a point where it's neither, well, it's ice and water at the same time, where it's melting around the edge. So, is there some kind of like where physical measurable space meets non-spatial space, or is it that actually they're the same, like in the same way that being and pure awareness are the same?
So you cannot put it in physical terms again.
Yeah.
You see, the sense is that because it is so empty of these attributes that you cannot say like the point would mean then a point in space. So it cannot be. It's just like what is the relationship of the snake with the rope? At which point do they meet or not? Is it? It is something which, strangely, the rope itself has given itself the capacity to see, to for it to seem like there is a snake. So, at which point can you say that there is now the overlap between them?
Just the seeming.
It's a seeming, exactly.
How can we verify that, like in our experience, that it's just a seeming?
This is what is being verified. One, the sense that that which is real seems to be that which is durable. You know? That, okay, all of this happens, but I remain untouched by it. Okay? So, if I remain unaffected by something, okay, then it seems more and more dreamlike as it goes on. Okay? And then when you come to waking state, what do you say about the dream? Ah, it seemed like there was this world, it seemed like there was this house in it, I was living in the house. You see, it seemed like that. What is seeming mean? It just like something which is not real, but can seem to present itself as reality. So, so then this experience becomes more and more dreamlike because you see that you are not contained in it in any way. Then you might start using these terms, which you don't have to. You could say, you might not say it's a seeming. You might just say it's a play, or you might just say it is I tasting myself in a phenomenal sort of way. So these explanations actually are not really so important, or this thing. It can just feel like how you described the dream last night. You'd say it seemed like I was in this place and this happened.
So, if when we say like there's a spaceless space or a non-spatial space, could we also say like a potential or a capacity?
Yes, exactly.
Like it's not that there's actually, because the mind obviously imagines like spatial space and non-spatial space, which is even bigger.
Exactly.
But it's not that.
It has no attribute like that. And actually, there's no word which we can truly use. We can say potential, of course, but even this potential then can have an energetic sort of thing, like a holding up of energy which is then available for it to be used. But this potential is so strange that the manifest also comes. So the seeming potential energy does get manifest, but that remains just the same. There is no change. So if you use these physics terms like potential energy and then what would you say when it manifests, but so kinetic or something, right? So then you would say, okay, the potential got used up and it transformed into this sort of force or energy. Here we cannot say that, because that's why that Purnamadam Purnamidam, that from the wholeness comes, and yet the wholeness remains untouched. So this is unique, and we cannot really slot it in any phenomenal sort of way. That is why it is so strange.
So it's like, obviously there's kind of contemplations about space and time and stuff which are really beautiful by themselves, but if we don't hold on to any notions, then at a certain point in time, like that will, because you were saying that, like, basically, so in a way what I'm getting is the best and fastest and easiest way to contemplate what's not real, or to so you said the snake and the rope, like what snakiness does the rope have? So the easiest way to contemplate that is to discover that it's a rope.
Yes.
Because then you see, oh, it was never a snake, therefore the question of where does the snake begin is void. So if we stay with notionlessness, at some point this distinction between like space and this other type of space is clear, because the spaceless space is the reality ultimately.
Yes. So this is very good what you say. So in our notionlessness, I also often say that the truth is completely apparent to us.
Okay.
You see? It's just that now all of this is completely apparent to you. You see? But what has happened is that the mind is not yet acclimatized. So we might not yet have the vocabulary or the conceptual presentation of what is happening. So it can just feel like, what is apparent? You think like that. The mind is disabled. See? But if you could just speak from what you see, see? And the speaking is not the important part. Anyway, but even then you just find that I am, you could say, and I'm aware of this. So that which is searching for or trying to get to, the absolute, is completely apparent to you in this motionlessness. But the mind is not satisfied with this kind of end of the movie. Let's say, the seeking has been going on and the story is here. It's like sometimes I used to say, if your autobiography was being written and you're coming to a beautiful point, you see, and one day nothing happened and the pen just stopped writing, would you be okay? The mind is unsatisfactory because you want to, at some level we hate those movies which just end abruptly. So it wants to then have it say, beat the bad guy, all that stuff needs to happen for it to. So, so in a way we can call it the giving up of the mind at some level, and then moving to relying on this other device, which is our intuitive voice, which is available to share from this kind of higher perspective, higher view. Is it audible what they're saying? Is it audible?
The useness doesn't need any quantification because it's non-quantifiable.
Yes.
And there is a tendency to glorify the self, which cannot be touched.
Yes.
Even the finest words can't touch.
Exactly.
Yeah? And this tendency to storify is the contentless vast ocean of being or self is an aberration of the mind. It is totally you cannot express inexpressible. It can just be
Yeah.
dived into, experienced, tasted without any expression. It itself is
Yes.
self-evident. It's here as a screen, as a very screen, as it encompasses everything. Space manifests out of it, forms manifest out of it. Going to, but we see only, the mind sees form and space, but it's just a manifestation of what is. And it can be expressed. The highest expression would be to sit there as itself and enjoy itself. That's what we call the feet of the Guru.
Yeah.
And in that, there is love, peace. Yeah. In that, there is devotion. All arises out. It's so loud in silence. The silence is so loud, actually. Once you know that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's grace.
Very good. I'm so happy sometimes to receive any report which doesn't have a but at the end. It's just like, no but.
The content is such small energy forms,
Yeah.
so minuscule, but it is given such credence. It's so silly, isn't it? That's why you call them children.
Yeah.
Once who knows that everything is children, the arises from them. Thought forms. We are only thought form, right?
Huh?
We are only thought form. Right?
We are?
No, that is manifestation.
Yes.
Not that we are. Thank you.
So welcome.
Only in your presence. That can happen. Yes.
Okay, let's jump into some of the questions. Father, is contemplation part of mind or no mind? Very good. So, when we say contemplation in satsang, it could have a little bit different meaning from what we hear the term contemplation in other fields of study. In contemplation, when I'm saying contemplate into what you are, or contemplate into what is belief, or what is attention, the number one rule for contemplation is to stay with our insight, not with our inferences. So, in that way, I would say that contemplation that I'm saying, speaking of, is not to do with the mind so much, but more to do with your direct inner experience, your intuitive insight. This is a very good question. So, Father, it is consciousness that is agreeing to the existence of what these energies are saying. That is, that it is agreeing that it is what the thoughts say it is. Yes, yes. Only consciousness. Consciousness itself agreeing to its own limitation and playing in that way. That is the only one who could agree or not agree. That is why Guruji might say Satsang is rehab for God, by God. You see? So it is consciousness itself that agrees to play with its limitation. Of course, as it is playing, it doesn't seem like a play. Nobody else is naturally here. There is not a God and me both together here right now. In fact, it is never God and me. But when we buy into these notions, when we agree to what the mind is saying, then it can feel like, it can seem like there is a me, which is separate from the rest, which is separate from God or consciousness, whatever term we use. And that's why Bhagavan said, to inquire, who am I? Cuts through all of this. And we find that the landing place for all our grievances, our irritations, all our ideas, plans, all our arrogance, there is no such landing place. So it attacks this idea at the root. When we look, who am I? And we say, just consciousness is here. Now, what does this consciousness actually want? Your being. What does it inherently want or not want? It doesn't have anything personal about it. So consciousness has a choice to play or not. Yes, yes. The only will there is the will of consciousness. If there is such a thing as will, it belongs to the only existent being that is here, that is consciousness. That is why we can say everything is Guru's grace or everything is the grace of God, consciousness, whatever term we use. The prayer of surrender is you are the doer and you are the experiencer, basically implying that you are the only existent being. There is nobody else. Now, say again, okay. So you said, so consciousness has a choice to play on off. And I was saying that if there is such a thing as will, it belongs to this being, this consciousness alone. So all is the will of consciousness. So this will, we can say choice. If it is consciousness will that it's going to play in a limited way, it's going to give assent to these thoughts, it will. If it is consciousness's play, the projector's so-called choice, what it is going to project on the screen. Even this play of reminding itself of its own truth is just the will of consciousness. The play to get deluded and to come out of delusion is both the will of consciousness itself. Now, sometimes when we hear this, we can feel like, okay, then it has nothing to do with me. You see? It is just for consciousness to do. What does it have to do with me? You see? Then again, we could be making a distinction between consciousness and me. Father, it has been feeling that freedom is so close, just beyond this wall of distracting thoughts that seem to fill my awareness and block my path and my field of vision. I see this is the larger space of awareness, but I fail to expose it and offer it at your feet in the heart. Freedom is close, but even that is not close enough. What is closer than close? What needs no paths, not a step, no journey? What is that? It doesn't need even a thought to be stirred. No feeling even of peace, joy, love has to arise. Nothing has to happen. What is that? This presence which you are tasting now is ever free. But it has given itself the ability to wear these masks. So before we can decide how close or far it is, we must clarify our starting point. And if you find that at the starting point itself you're free, then no journey left. But then even that no journey or no seeking can become a concept, is it? How many of you feel even after coming to satsang, and it's fine, completely fine like that we have not tasted the presence which is spoken of. Like we can say being or consciousness or atma. But do you feel that you have? I just want to know, just for some feedback, that this sense is apparent, it's a bit dodgy, or actually no idea. So what would you say? Apparent? How many? Raise your hands.
I had
Apparent?
this feeling like a few days ago, like I was walking with no reason,
Yeah.
just in silence.
Yeah.
And I still don't know if it's my mind.
Silence cannot be mine. Silence cannot be mine, so it's not mine.
So if I can reach that state anytime, is it real?
Before you can reach that state, is that not already here? The states will come and go.
Is it like I remember that state then?
All states will come and go. You see? Everything became silent as you were walking and just something, no? Became silent. But you were still there, no? That which saw that something was noisy, and then became silent. So you saw that without the noise, your being is just there. Now the same being is here. The same existence is here. But sometimes then the noise can seem to come back, but nothing really happened to that. But what can happen in these spiritual experiences, you see, of awakening is that after they happen, it can feel like I must hold on to this. You see? Or after they're gone, then I feel like, oh, that should not have gone, and that is freedom. Once I get to that permanently, then I will be free. But it is not that. You see? It is showing you that all these states can change, but you remain what you are. You see? So freedom is not the holding on to of a particular state. Freedom is the allowing of all states to come and go. You see? Now, as everything fell away, you were there, and as things come back, you are still there. Is that you really affected by the coming and going of this? You see? It is only our conclusions which are affected. Oh, that was it. That should I have that only? Really like that. So, so freedom means to allow. All these states will come and go, because the trouble with, again, I'm saying the trouble with spiritual experiences is that the mind can latch on to those and say, see, that that must be. Then you are free. But it's not that. Everything can be, but you are free. You see? And sometimes when we have these notions that it must be that, then maybe a fresher, deeper experience was waiting to come. But we are saying, no, no, I want only that. So, freedom is a big allowing. And as you are open, you'll see all these beautiful insights will come. But we will not get attached even to these. Apparent and magnificent, but so brief because the mind crashes in with white noise. I don't even know what the thoughts are. So, consciousness has this ability which might be helpful, which is to view itself as pure space. So, tell me if you can't relate to this. Just see yourself as this spacious existence, which is subtler than even this space. Now you have to tell me what can crash into this. Another one says, so there really isn't any escape to this pretend suffering if consciousness is playing as pretend suffering. So there really isn't any escape to pretend suffering if consciousness is playing as pretend suffering. Yes, in a way. But the thing is that the minute it is seen that it is consciousness itself, you see, that is the conundrum, where consciousness creates a pretense of suffering, and most of humanity we can say is suffering. But then consciousness also brings itself to a point where it starts to shine its light on this play of suffering. That is what is happening in satsang. Once you say that it is consciousness itself, you see, then you cannot find the sufferer. And without the sufferer, the suffering doesn't have any legs to stand on. So there isn't any escape to this pretend suffering if consciousness is playing as pretend suffering, yes. Until it isn't anymore. And as long as it is experientially felt from the perspective of presence, knowing its presence, that every single moment as a pretense is meaningless, is pointless. Maybe I didn't get this part. And as long as it is, so there really isn't any escape to this pretend suffering. So if consciousness is playing out as a sufferer, yes. Until it isn't anymore, yes. And as long as it is, it's experientially felt from the perspective of the presence, from the perspective of the presence, knowing it is a presence. The perspective of the yes, that every single moment as a pretense is meaningless. Yes. You see? But in that moment, where is the suffering gone? You see? In that moment, where it is seen that it is a pretense and the pretense is meaningless, this is the beautiful pointlessness or meaninglessness, which is the antidote of suffering in a way. You see? Because if you found at the center of this there was a person whose life was meaningless, then that would be even more suffering. But this is not what we find. We find that the center of this is just presence. You see? And we do not find the one who is the individual claimant to this life, whose life would be meaningless. So this presence. That's why, in fact, we can call it a play. So if it was a suffering full meaninglessness, then we would never be able to call it a play. It's only that you find that here there is this being, you see, which remains untouched in the appearance of all of these things, including the appearance of mind. You see? And the pretense has been meaningless. But just as the going to a playground is meaningless. You see? Like I was saying the other day, a child does not go to the monkey bars to build muscles. You see? It is a meaningless, pointless play, and yet it is a play. It is kind of worse than being completely oblivious to the presence. It is worse only if we try to hold on to both presence and what that presence should mean for me. You see? Because then that can feel like you're being completely stretched out. All were meant to say pretense, not presence. Okay, but reads more true with the so-called mistakes. All were meant to say pretense. Perspective of the pretense, knowing it is a pretense. Yes, yes, that's what we just answered, which was that the meaninglessness of the pretense can seem very oppressive if you still have that pretense of a individual there. You see? If you still have a perspective of a somebody, then it can seem very, very oppressive. You see? That's what this whole philosophical nihilism is about, actually. But once you see that I do not find this entity, all I taste is my presence. which remains untouched by no matter what might be the events in life or even the interpretations of these. Then it becomes a playful play full of wonder. Right? Right? I have to use some words to describe this, but the wonder is more primal than that. Look at the wonder of this current moment right now, even the content of it, like beings from all over the world are sitting in this room. You see? And we have this strange computer with so many others also there on this device. You see? All various time zones, all gathering together to find some communion, to taste this presence which is being spoken of. And you feel it's a wonderful moment. Right? If you take out the pretense of, oh, am I getting it? I'm not getting it. What's the point of all of this? And all of that. It's a wonderful communion in a way. But it is even more. Even if you take out all these interpretations, it's even more beautiful, more playful. So before we can agree to the pointlessness, we must first find what the point could have been. Let's say what should have been the point of existence. Before we can agree to the term that it is pointless, can we say, okay, what according to us should have been the point? So even that is not clear. And whatever ideas we've had over the years that this is it, this is what it should be, this is what it is like, all those have fallen away, have dropped off along the way. As self, I am untouchable even by the notion of touchable or untouchable. Yes. So I say the truth that I am speaking of is not a participant in this play of opposites of true and false. Even if you can hear this, it is quite enough actually. Because otherwise, everything we say in satsang can also be put in our conceptual framework, which is full of opposites. So, what we are speaking of, the self, the truth, the absolute, it is not a participant in opposites. This truth does not have false. This self is not participant in that play of being or non-being, of existence or non-existence even. Everything that can have an opposite is not inherently present in the truth, but it does seem to manifest all these qualities. And that's why at best you have to call it a play. You see, we must not even take the term play too seriously. We must just play with the term play. Because otherwise we can make it very mental, even about this play. How is it a play? All I see is suffering. You see? Then it can become like that. Father, I only say all this because after so long here with you and Guruji, I still wants to play as pretense. And it is experienced, as you say, as this nihilism, or however you spell it. It's right, actually. Daily, the thoughts are like this. And it is only being here and trusting you more that I find some reason to stay in this play. And the girls. Otherwise, there's a feeling to quite willingly leave this play. You see? Now, what does the nihilism say? You can leave this play by killing yourself or suicide or something like that. You see? What am I saying? You leave this play as person and play as God, which has always been your true position anyway. Because nobody, no nihilist can tell you that the ending of this body will be the end of this play. So as bad as this play might seem at the current time, who knows? You don't want to get into from frying pan into the fire. So, so we snap out of this play, not in the way that this nihilistic mind is telling you, but in the sense of be here with me now. And this trust that you speak of is very good because you know then that I'm not just making up these fancy words. This is what was tasted here is tasted here. It is possible to snap out of this identity. And if I do that now thing with you now, you will see that there's nothing to fret about. It's very beautiful like this that um, the other day someone who had not been in touch with me for a long time, they got in touch and they said, Father, just explain it to me very simply because I'm tired of this life. I don't know what to do. I have no peace. So just like a little child, you explain it to me very simply. And I just said to them that when we look within, what do you find? Who is here? And in that moment, something became clear. And they said, this is the divine presence which has always been here. Simpler than snapping your finger. What is it that takes no time? And I know you know all of this, you heard all of this from me before. But the thing is, every moment is auspicious to dip in again. If he just keep saying, but yeah, I know all of this, he's said it before, this kind of thing, then we again can activate this kind of pretense more and more. But just like now, what's your trouble? If in your original, if in your original nature, which is available to you every moment, all of this, whatever you might have believed for the last 10,000 lives is not there. When you are tasting this divine presence which I'm speaking of, as who as the divine itself. No, Father, I trust you. Yes, yes, that's what I said. Because you trust me, it's so beautiful because you will not really fall for these nihilistic mind traps. Although I know they can be very alluring from time to time. It won't give up over and over, it is seen. But it doesn't have to give it up. You give up on it now. Give up on it. Whatever it's saying now, give up on it. Give up, give up, give up. I can sometimes use the limited attention that we have to my advantage also, isn't it? Because the mind is always saying, no, no, come, listen to me, come, listen to me. Sometimes I should say, no, no, come, you listen to me, come, come. You give up on it, you listen to me. You cannot listen to both because attention is limited. Yes. Father, it appears that pain takes me closer to truth and pleasure takes me further away. How to deal with desire for pleasure without taking a position of renunciation? See? Now, what I'm going to say might sound very difficult, but actually it is the simplest. Don't take any position with regard to anything. Even drop these conclusions. Pain takes me closer to truth, pleasure takes me further away. Nobody actually knows these things. And who are we talking about anyway? So see if it is possible for a few minutes, for a few seconds, to live a labelless existence. Like the simple not knowing of anything, the beautiful I don't know. Is it? So don't try to solve these problems. Just step back. Because the mind will give you lots of problems which have no solutions, being they're trying to solve these problems for like thousands and thousands of years. But when you step back, you will see what problem, who does it belong to? It's like that's why these books like Yoga Vashish sometimes are very good. Because Vashish will say, you know that seventh son of the woman who had no children, that seventh son he had a dream in which he was a king, and in that kingdom he had these problems. It can sound like a very strange story, but this is our life. The non-existent one has lots of problems to deal with. How to solve them? And you know what? One problem I've also seen with many who come to satsang is that they won't know what to do if they had no problem. It's just like, yeah, the basis of my life is problem. Yeah, I have to have something to solve. We have this. Some of us are like these solvers. The main identity is the solver. So you just feel like, if I have no problem to solve, then what's the point? You see?
Bored.
Yeah. So then, how do we solve the boredom problem? Yeah, this kind of everything then becomes okay. But the life of the sage is not like that. That's why it's so beautiful to have living masters who can show you that life will continue. Nothing will, you know, nothing has to stop in the way of worldly appearance, and it's completely possible to have a problemless life. There's finally, okay, before I end, I just want to say finally there's only one seeming problem. And that seeming problem is that God's presence has been mistaken to be the presence of an individual. When you say I exist, It can seem like you're speaking of the existence of some person or some individual, but that ego just doesn't exist. When you truly taste your presence, tell me if you find a person there. This is what I was actually asking earlier. When I say presence or your being, does it seem apparent or this thing or completely unclear? As you taste your presence now, did you find somebody who has likes and dislikes, a plan? Does it have, you know, is that inherently present in the presence? Who is this one? Whose presence is this? Even before you can say I am sitting, there is I am. Whose I amness is this? Is there a person sitting there waiting to get to God? Or these are just ideas? What do you find when you look? Did you find Santa Claus? Who did you find when you looked? So this is the problem of the master. Says, I want to give freedom to somebody, but I can never find that one to give freedom to, because everyone I meet is free. Who should I give it to? Show me the one that is bound. I want to give this gift of freedom to someone. Show me the one that is bound. I'll give. Present that one. That, like Guruji would say, let that one present itself in the witness box. God Himself has designed this illusion. That's why it seemed juicy, yes. Not some small time game designer. God created disciples to play with the master. I feel like that every day. Father, in the same way, as one day I realized my parents fighting, the things I raged over, wanting them to stop, it would just seem that they cannot stop. It is as it is. Yes. It sometimes feels the same empathy towards the play as it plays out here. But the suffering of it is simultaneously there. See, if by suffering you mean an unmixed emotion, like some compassion or some anger or something that arises, you see? Unmixed in the sense, unmixed with the notion of it and how it should be. That is very much the natural part of this play. Usually I use the term suffering for that mixed with a resistance, what a notion of what it should be or what it should not be. That is what suffering really is. So you say, so it feels like this acceptance, but also this experience suffering. So, and I know you might be dreading that I'm going to say this. So then we have to begin and say, so whose acceptance or suffering is this? So who's accepting the world as it is? Or the play as it is? And if we go back to the beginning of our conversation, we see it is consciousness itself. So now what power is there that makes consciousness suffer? Only its own power of belief in a limitation, or own power of belief in a notion of separation. Sometimes also good to look at some very primary notions like up and down, left and right, time and space. And if I can say to some of you, at least those who've been with me for quite long, just try to live for a few moments without even these notions. Without these distinctions. Don't know what up is, what down is, what true is, what false is. Don't know any of this. For some time. With no forcing. You find great beauty in allowing your presence to breathe without this notional baggage all the time. And I know that some of these seem so fundamental, so primary to our existence. Like, what can we really say without the notion of time and space? But they are notions fundamentally. Okay? So, having said that, it is time to go. Thank you all so much for being in Satsang today. Sadhguru Shri Muji Baba ki Jai.
Sadhguru Shri Ananta-Ji ki Jai.
Guru Kripa Kevalam.